Coming up, 2018, the examined year.
What happened in the past 12 months that challenged our assumptions and made us think about things in new ways?
The year in climate consciousness.
People thought climate was all melting ice far away or polar bears. It was a remote problem. It really brought climate into people's lungs and consciousness.
The year in demagoguery and propaganda.
Life is a struggle. Nature involves a struggle. And the winner has value and the loser has no value.
Plus a philosophical roundtable with our colleague Debra Satz and our host emeritus, John Perry.
We're being upended by technologies that are restructuring the nature of work and leading to much more churn.
If we took the Constitution seriously, then the need for less human labor would be a good thing.
Join us as we shed philosophical light on ideas and events of the past 12 months.
It's the examined year, 2018.
Coming up on Philosophy Talk. Welcome to Philosophy Talk, the program that questions everything.
Except your intelligence. I'm Ken Taylor.
And I'm Josh Landy. We're here at the studios of KALW San Francisco.
Continuing conversations that begin at Philosophers Corner on the Stanford campus, where I teach philosophy and Josh directs the Philosophy and Literature Initiative.
Today, it's a special edition of Philosophy Talk, the examined year 2018. It's a look back at the philosophical significance of events and ideas that have shaped the last 12 months.
Because, Josh, the unexamined year is not worth reviewing.
Indeed, and what better way to do that than by getting the whole band together. So later in the show, we'll have a philosophical roundtable with our colleague Debra Satz and our host emeritus, John Perry.
We'll also be joined by other special guests to think about the year in demagoguery and propaganda and the year in climate consciousness.
Yeah, 2018 was a year of extreme and troubling weather events like orange snow in Eastern Europe and frozen rain in Florida. There were also the record-breaking wildfires, earthquakes, and hurricanes. Climate scientists sounded the alarm, but those in denial simply turned the other way.
In just a bit, we'll talk to Greg Dalton. He's the founder and host of the Climate One podcast. But first, we sent our roving philosophical reporter, Holly J. McDeed, to walk us through the major weather and climate moments of 2018. She files this report.
A new report by the UN carries a stark warning. The world has little more than a decade to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere, or it may be too late.
Crop production will decline, food and waterborne illness will spread, it will be hard to breathe, and more of us will die.
Mr. President, have you read the climate report yet? I've seen it, I've read some of it, and it's fine.
What they're calling here Furnace Friday could become the hottest July day in British history.
I think it's great. I like it. I love it. The warmer, the better.
A bit hot. Might be too hot. It is quite hot.
In recent days, temperatures at the North Pole have surged above freezing. Scientists suggest warming temperatures are eroding the polar vortex.
Pakistan has declared a state of emergency in the midst of a crushing heat wave that has already killed 800 people.
Now, an earthquake has triggered a tsunami, which has struck a coastal city in Indonesia.
It's now a mass grave.
Tonight, Santa Ana winds back with a vengeance, giving the Woolsey fire more strength, spreading flames across Southern California.
They didn't give no evacuation notices or nothing. They just stopped me and wouldn't let me go in. This is my baby. This is my wife. I should have been laying on there with them.
But you can't fight nature. I mean, this is too powerful. These are still raging. You could not have done anything.
If we don't take action, the collapse of our civilizations and the extinction of much of the natural world is on the horizon.
I don't want to give trillions and trillions of dollars. I don't want to lose millions and millions of jobs. I don't want to be put at a disadvantage. And will it change back? Probably, that's what I think.
And we begin with the Camp Fire in Butte County, which is now the most destructive wildfire in state history.
We're not going to catch on fire, okay? We're going to stay away from it. And we'll be just fine. Okay? We're doing all right.
Well, a UN meeting on climate change is underway in the heart of Poland's coal mining region.
You have ignored us in the past, and you will ignore us again.
Protesters here at the UN Climate Summit interrupted a Trump administration event promoting coal and other fossil fuels.
Under President Trump's leadership, the United States is experiencing economic growth at a record level while leading the world in reducing emissions.
Every single step forward is a big achievement.
The deal sets out rules to implement and finance the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement, which aims to limit global temperature increases to below 2 degrees Celsius.
It is so decided.
For Philosophy Talk, I'm Holly J. McDede.
Thanks, Holly, I think. I'm Ken Taylor, here with my Stanford colleague Josh Landy, and we're taking a philosophical look at the last 12 months. It's the examined year, 2018.
We're joined now by Greg Dalton. He's the founder and host of Climate One, a radio show and podcast about building a sustainable economy and stabilizing the Earth's climate. Welcome to Philosophy Talk, Greg.
It's great to be here.
So we're doing the year in climate consciousness in 2018. And give me your assessment. Was this a momentous year in the development of climate consciousness, or just another also-ran year, or what? What kind of year was it?
It was a big year. I think the big story of 18 was the wildfires in California and the American West that really broke through into certainly the urban consciousness of many people. Wildfires are thought about as, faraway places that don't affect urban people, but there are 6 million people who were deeply affected for nearly 2 weeks by Beijing level of air pollution coming from wildfires and paradise around there. I think that broke through to consciousness that climate can affect me in this liberal bubble of the Bay Area, where people thought climate was all ice, melting ice far away, or polar bears. It was a remote problem. It really brought climate into urban California and into people's lungs and consciousness.
I mean, that makes sense in California, but what about the hurricanes? I mean, this year we had Hurricane Florence in the Carolinas, which, couldn't we argue that too had an impact on the way people were thinking about things?
It certainly did. Those huge hurricanes are coming again and again with greater frequency and intensity. It used to be like one every 10, 20 years, and now they're like, it's Harvey, Irma, Maria, Florence, bam, bam, bam.
And so do you think the Americans have gotten to the point where, there was a point when, think back to World War II. Americans had their heads in the sand. They thought, Hitler can maraud over Europe. It doesn't matter. It was out there somewhere, but it wasn't really about us. Have Americans gotten to the point where they think climate change is real? It's about us. It will impact what we do. We have to face it. We have to make plans and changes. Have we gotten to that point yet?
Well, I think the thing with totalitarian leader overseas or anywhere, there's a villain with a face with an intent to inflict harm.
Right.
And in climate change, we're all complicit. So there is no, if North Korea was responsible for climate change, we'd be mobilizing and attacking it, right? If there was a dictator who was behind climate change, we'd be mobilizing. But we're all complicit, and there's no villain with an intent to inflict harm. There's no enemy face. And so I think that we're all conflicted. Donald Trump doesn't want to believe it, and a lot of Berkeley liberals also don't want to believe it.
I take your point. I take your point that we're all complicit. But consider the fact that oil companies knew about the danger of climate change as early as the 80s, as far as I understand, and contrived to keep people systematically, deliberately contrived to spread disinformation to keep people in the dark about it. Maybe those corporations don't have faces, but aren't they identifiable enemies in this battle?
There are, and the oil companies have certainly, ExxonMobil and others have certainly confused, deliberated the public. They took the playbook from the tobacco companies: create doubt, doubt is our product, buy time to continue profits. There are bad actors in this for sure, and they've constrained our choice and delayed solutions. But I just think there's another layer of this where it's hard to say. People look at climate and say, yeah, it's real, it's happening. What can I do? I bought a Prius, I recycle. What can an individual do, right? So, and Bill McKibben says what an individual can do is act less like an individual, to collect, to work, to join with others. That's what individuals can do, is not act as individuals, because virtuous, voluntary constraint on buying a smaller car, eating less meat is important and insufficient. It's necessary and insufficient. It will not get us there. Virtue and voluntarism will not get us where we need to go.
Right, because it's a drop in the bucket, right? You start recycling a little bit more. You don't use straws, but you compare the damage done by that to the damage done by a major corporation.
Right. Well, those corporations, remember, it's easy to blame corporations. I interview lots of people on the Climate One podcast who all say someone else should do something. China should do this. Republicans should do that.
Exactly.
The oil companies should do that. Auto companies are always pointing the finger at someone else. Look inward. What am I doing? And that's where, we have some responsibility, but we don't have the choices or the full power as individuals. That's why through democracy,
collective action.
And that's why it's the year in climate consciousness. Consciousness is spread out all among all human beings. Some of it is collective consciousness. Some of it is political consciousness. That's why I want to ask, where is our worldwide consciousness and the various pockets of local consciousness? Where are they? Think about the voters. I mean, it's important. The corporate entities play a role. There's no doubt about that. You can't let them off the hook. But we, by our collective action, play a role. We, by our uninformed, unreflective decision-making, we, by our information-seeking behavior, or we, by our willingness to allow people to manipulate us and demagogues, right? I mean, we play a role too.
But younger people increasingly are seeing, they're behind, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and some of the people, this Green New Deal. There's a lot of young push there that they're looking at a lifetime of a changed climate. I didn't really become conscious about the changed climate till I was in my 40s. People who are in their teens, younger, they're saying, we're looking at a hot and wobbly world. We want action now. So I think they're pushing from below elected leaders and even companies.
So I ask you a more philosophical thing here, because I really am puzzled about what shapes collective consciousness, right? And how it moves to okay, we are going to do this. How do we get to the point where we're all in and we stop thinking about how can I get the upside and push the downside off to the next generation or this country? Or how do we get to that point?
I ask myself that too. I often ask myself, when will getting on an airplane be the moral equivalent of clubbing a baby seal?
Yeah.
We don't do that. No good. Like no one I know would say, I want to go club a baby seal. Right? So when would getting on an airplane, which is one of the most harmful climate actions an individual can take, be socially or morally unacceptable? I'm not willing to be that first person.
Right, because
I've heard of people who will take trains and do not get on airplanes. You can think about the economic impact of that. Think after 9/11 when people weren't flying and the economy was hurt.
How do I get to my conference in Europe if I don't get on an airplane?
So what would it take you to get to that point where, say, I'm not going to go to that conference in Europe. I'm not going to go see my in-laws in Hong Kong. Sorry, I love you. I can't get on a plane and come see you. What will get us there? I don't know. A Gandhi, king-like leader?
But what you're saying is what's needed is a cultural shift. I mean, you think about smoking. God knows how much percentage of the population used to smoke. And it used to be considered not only acceptable,
but cool. Yeah.
And now we've managed, and little by little, drop by drop, we've managed to turn this from something cool to something uncool. It's that person over there out on the street.
Yeah.
They're addicted. It's too bad for them.
Yeah.
I hope I don't get addicted. So maybe that's what we need. Maybe it's already happening. You talk about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her Green New Deal. Maybe that's what we need, and maybe that's what's happening. This sense among the young generation, maybe percolating up to older generations, that it's just not cool.
Yeah,
it's not cool to desecrate the environment.
But the thing
cool to
is,
create a world in which mass extinctions are
But the thing is, it's not cost-free, right? We have to make some hard decisions.
Right.
So we can't pretend that there aren't hard decisions.
So if we all became Buddhist quickly and let go of our material attachments, we wouldn't consume as much, and we probably would be happier, as you've done shows on happiness and connectedness and resilience. But the world economy would collapse, and contributions to public radio and other academic institutions.
We wouldn't have a show?
Right, yeah. So we're all bound in this in a way that's really, really intricate. And
it is.
It's hard to see a way out of it in time, or we start to just kind of shrug and we get used to wearing masks during smoky days, and we get used to rising seas, and we get used to all these things that are here now.
But that's how, because we're talking costly stuff, I just don't know what kind of systems we have in place, what kind of political system, what kind of cultural system, what kind of ideologies we have in place to say, we're going to make these hard decisions in a democratic way that respects all stakeholders. I
hope we get to that hard 20. We got to get through that easy 80 first,
Right.
and that's electric cars.
Yep.
I have a teenager who doesn't like to drive in a gasoline car. She likes to go in our electric car because electric is cool and it's cleaner, and that's a generational changing in the United States and elsewhere. So there are strong cultural forces who are getting it. It's just not enough fast enough.
Well, on that note, except for the not enough fast enough, you've left me a bit uplifted. So, Greg, I want to thank you so much for joining us. It's been a fascinating conversation.
Thank you both.
Greg Dalton, founder and host of Climate One at the Commonwealth Club, on the Year in Climate Consciousness. You're listening to Philosophy Talk. Today we're taking a philosophical lens to ideas and events of the last 12 months. It's the examined year 2018.
In our next segment, we'll welcome back our host emeritus, John Perry, and our colleague, Debra Satz, to ask them what happened this year to challenge their assumptions and make them think about things in new ways.
It's our Philosophers Roundtable, when Philosophy Talk continues.
Welcome back to Philosophy Talk. It's the examined year, 2018. I'm Ken Taylor.
And I'm Josh Landy. Today we're taking a philosophical look back at some of the big ideas and events of the past 12 months, because the unexamined year is not worth reviewing.
And what better way to examine the year that was than by welcoming back our colleague Debra Satz, who was recently named Dean of Stanford School of Humanities and Sciences, and our host emeritus, John Perry, for a philosophical roundtable. John, Debra, welcome back.
Glad to be here, Ken.
Great to be here, Ken.
So, Debra, what have you been thinking about this year?
I've been thinking about the pace of change. You know, it seems to me that we are reeling from the kinds of changes that are happening in our society and in our world. Really, we're being upended by technologies that are destabilizing democracy, putting pressure on privacy, undermining democracy at the same time that they're connecting us to each other. And they're also, in a very scary ways, restructuring the nature of work and leading to much more churn and instability in the system.
But it's not just upending the nature of work. I mean, they're smart people, colleagues of ours. I mean, nobody really knows for sure what the onslaught of AI is going to do. But some people predict that it's going to reduce the demand for human labor, reduce the demand for human labor like by 40% over the next couple of decades. Right. In the same time, it empowers our reach and it makes us more productive. It eliminates the demand for human labor. I think these are really troubled times.
But reducing the demand for human labor isn't, what's the word, eo ipso, a bad thing. If we took the Constitution seriously, which says that the federal government is to provide for the general welfare, if it was actually doing that, then the need for less human labor would be a good thing.
Right. It could liberate people from horrible work, but that's not what's going to happen.
No, the idea is to say, people will work less but get paid the same hourly wage. That's a bad idea.
Well, look, you say that's not what's going to happen.
You know, to be fair, it's not only technology that's putting pressure on democracy right now. It's also populist reactions to migration. And the movement of peoples is something that all across the world is leading developed countries to turn inward and want to close their borders.
I think this is another complicated thing, another thing we're barely coming to grips with. It's connected not just to the current political system, Brexit and the rise of Trump and all that sort of stuff. It's going to get worse. Right now, the world has a massive migration problem. There are massive numbers of people on
wait
the
till
move in
global
the world.
warming really hits.
Exactly. Right. Mm-hmm. So the migration problem is going to snowball and snowball and snowball. And we're already showing that our political systems don't know how to deal with this.
Right. And we have, we've not achieved an Eden on Earth, but the social democracies are a wonderful example of how to have a humane, developed economy, and they are fragile right now.
But still, you might say that migration is a huge opportunity for the world because people are basically migrating from terrible places, either because of climate change or because of government. Suppose the 17 Saudis who flew into the World Trade Center had migrated and gotten away from Wahhabi Muslimism. That would have been a good thing.
But, some of the European countries there's a capacity limit to how many people they can take, and we don't have a way at the moment of responding, and they won't be able to take all the climate refugees. We need another solution to this problem. We need to figure out how to make it possible for people not to have to migrate.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So, John, Debra has been having some dark thoughts this year. That's what happens, Debra, when you become dean. You start to see the dark underbelly of things, of how things really work. But John, what have you been? What have you been reflecting on this year? What strikes you?
For more than this year, I've been suffering from a bad disease that's called Trump derangement syndrome.
I thought you were going to say philosophy.
And it's driven me to be a bit of a recluse, and I must say I'm enjoying it terribly. I get up in the morning, drink coffee, and smoke my pipe and write until noon. I take my dog for a walk, do a few errands, and then at 4 o'clock I fill a glass half full of whiskey, sit down, write, smoke my pipe, and drink whiskey until Trevor Noah and Stephen Colbert come on.
So then you get your fill of Trump
sound like in a somewhat dark frame of mind in the following way. But it sounds like you found a solution. It's like the Zorba the Greek solution. When everything goes to heck,
you dance.
You dance. Right. And dance, there's a solace in the... Is that the kind of age...
Or it's candide, cultivate your garden.
Exactly. Is that the kind of age you think we're living in, seriously, in an age in which, what do? We dance. Because everything has gone to heck.
Well, that's not my view, but it's not really that I have a view. Aside from being depressed about Trump, I'm depressed about the situation we seem to be in, which is we can identify really huge problems, but we can't act on them.
Right.
So we've identified climate change. Even if we'd stayed in the Paris Accords, the measures would be inadequate. If we could somehow get all the scientists that are working on, making Facebook work on making cows less flatulent, that might be a good thing. But we don't know how to do it. We know that, look, it's the 21st century. We've had 3 presidents. 2 of them have been elected by a minority of voters because of the Electoral College. And frankly, they've both been disasters.
Yeah.
It looks like a problem. You don't hear that discussed on MSNBC or CNN or anywhere else. So it's that kind of depresses me.
So look.
Slightly.
I do think we have these enormous problems. Enormous. And there have been ages in which we've had enormous problems that we didn't face up to, and then they came crashing in on us, right? The 20s and the 30s, right. The collapse of the near collapse of capitalism, and then the rise of the Nazis and all that sort of stuff. America was this isolationist, don't look at... I think we're in another age when we're not looking at the problems that are right there on the horizon.
So I agree with that, but I want to sound a couple of good notes. Mm-hmm. So as China has taken 1 billion people out of desperate poverty, right. That's a very positive development of the last decade.
And they've only imprisoned a small
only a portion of them. And I think we've seen, a kind of rise of women, both women in politics in the most recent election, and women saying we're not going to tolerate sexual harassment at work anymore, and
there's a record number of women in Congress currently.
And there's a record number. So I think those are good things.
Those are all good things. I don't think history is non-monotonically marching in one direction or the other. Those are all good things.
We talked to Steven Pinker earlier this year, and I think he would want us to also add a decrease. You talked about a decrease in extreme poverty, decrease in child mortality, increase in literacy, progress on HIV and malaria. Nonetheless, like, these are excellent things. Peace, between Ethiopia and Eritrea. These are great things.
Yeah, it's the nonetheless. I'm with you there.
I mean, if things continue the way they are with climate change, I fear that many of these gains are just going to be wiped out.
You're listening to Philosophy Talk. It's the examined year, 2018. It's our host roundtable with John Perry, Josh Landy, Debra Satz, and yours truly, Ken Taylor.
I want to agree with Debra, though. A lot of good things. I think the Me Too movement is great. Ruth Bader Ginsburg hasn't retired. There must be something else.
No, look.
Harvey Weinstein's been indicted. This is good.
And there are many good. I mean, some of this.
I finished 3 books.
Yeah. And some of these, it's like the technology. It's amazing. It's just.
You have to keep in mind that there's a lot of contingencies. Migration, is, as Debra says, is really at the heart of a lot of this. Why do we have so much migration? Well, part of it is climate change, but part of it is that when 17 Saudis flew planes into the World Trade Center, Dick Cheney said, let's invade Iraq. And that set Syria on fire. That led to lots of problems. Contingencies are important. I think.
Right. You have if the Supreme Court doesn't declare victory for Bush, you don't get the Iraq War. If you don't get the Iraq War.
Now, I don't worship Al Gore, but my God, he was way ahead of his time on climate change. He might have had a committee that came up with the idea, maybe a good idea to lock pilots' doors. You never know. Contingency, and it all goes back to the stupid Electoral College. It doesn't show that democracy doesn't work. It shows that we're frozen. We can't make changes.
But that's a U.S.-centered. I mean, because there's all this is a lot of this is happening in other countries.
Yeah, it's true, but
a lot of it is our fault.
Well, I agree about the Syria and what we did upending the Middle East.
But I don't want to lose sight of the U.S. because I don't believe America was really ever fully lived up to its Republican dream. But now I say even the dream is faded. And it has to do with something that John referred to, right? Our Constitution has so many anti-majoritarian things. So it's so not democratic in the one person, one vote kind of idea. And the worst thing about it is the U.S. Constitution has almost no feedback mechanisms because it's so hard to change. It's so hard to turn discontent. And for all these reasons, I think America is unraveling. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg. But here's a fact that people may not know about the Electoral College. Start at the smallest states and win every smallest state by one vote, and then you don't care how many votes you get. What percentage of the popular vote would be sufficient to guarantee that you won the election? 23%. If you started at the top of the largest state, then I'm going to win every large state by one vote going down until I get enough, and then I don't care. Then all you need is 27% of the total vote. So it's a crazy system.
Well,
crazy.
If it worked the way the Founding Fathers thought, namely the Electoral College would be wise persons.
Exactly.
It might have been all right. But, it isn't just things that require constitutional change. Right now, we have a system in which 2 guys, what's his name, Ryan and McConnell,
Paul Ryan, yeah,
control what in our democratic system either house is allowed to vote on. You could have 90% of the senators in favor of something, as may be the case with this Mueller protection bill, but if Mitch McConnell won't allow a vote on it. Now, that doesn't require a constitutional amendment. It requires common sense. In a democracy, you do not give 2 people the right to control what your democratically or more or less democratically elected legislature can vote on.
But there's also been just a decline in basic norms of commitment, like we're all in this together. We might disagree on some things, but we're going to do what's good for the country. That is totally gone. And, of course, there's an uneven history of this. I don't want to idealize the past, but it is totally gone.
I totally agree. But I think that shows something deep. The reasons there are lots of reasons why it's totally gone, lots and lots and lots of reasons. And they're kind of reinforcing, and it makes it worse. I think if you're going to have the minimal requirement of democratic self-governance, pluralistic, sprawling, pluralistic, snarling polity is an ethos of at least begrudging tolerance of one another. We've lost that ethos. We've just completely lost it, right? The media has helped us lose it. Manipulative politicians have helped us lose it. Lots and lots of things. The globalization has helped us lose it.
Well, actually, the decline of the media the decline of print media and the rise of 1,000 million sources of information, so everybody has their own information, has also
right.
Distort the word information.
Right. Yes.
So it's I don't know. I think we're in a mess. I don't think Europe is much better off.
Europe has some achievements that we have never found our way to. So in Europe, if you look at their education system, their healthcare systems, it's not that they win on everything, but they win on most things.
Right, and
you
look at the difference between the state of debate currently in Britain versus here. Britain is in the throes of making one of the most staggeringly terrible decisions it's ever made. And yet, for the rest, the parliamentary system seems more or less to be holding up. People are adhering largely to the norms of debate. You don't have somebody saying, I'm not even going to bring this thing to a vote. So I think, there's a difference in degree between the kind of situation that's happening in Europe and, not to downplay, of course, the rise of people like Marine Le Pen and the Gilets jaunes and all of that other stuff. That's extremely significant and worrying. But to see that currently in the United States, you have members of Congress who I can only think understand that there's at least a chance that the president is seriously compromised. There's at least a chance that sensitive information could be flowing through the president.
Or that the sky is blue.
Or that the sky is blue. And yet they're knowingly dissimulating on that. That's extraordinary. Why wouldn't you care?
Yeah. Well, because of this. Look, here's what one of the things the Founding Fathers thought. They thought, well, the Congress would be jealous of its institutional prerogatives. And so, if the executive trampled on those institutional prerogatives, they'd resist. Yeah. Well, they didn't foresee. They worried about factional.
They didn't foresee that one party could control all three branches of government.
So they didn't see that the partisan prerogatives would align the executive and the legislature and the judiciary. Right. And so once these are aligned, the Constitution and their thought for it is basically null and void. It's not. People say we're approaching a constitutional crisis. We're already in a constitutional crisis because its fundamental mechanism, the check and balance and the jealousy of the prerogatives, have been turned off. So what do we have? We have what John was.
Well, okay, so that's a valid point. Like you, I started a book out of frustration, and it was called My Father's GOP.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I'm from a Republican family. I was a devoted Republican for a good portion of my life. If I'd been allowed to vote in 1960, I would have voted for Nixon because I thought the missile gap was complete crock and that the Democrat was a racist party. The Republican Party is one of the great things about America, and now it's so sad.
So we've discussed a lot of rather grim topics around 2018. Debra and John, do you have any somewhat uplifting thoughts to leave us with?
Philosophy Talk has made it through another year. It's thriving better than ever. And technology has a good size. In the era of Kanye West, I can turn on Pandora and listen to Peter, Paul, and Mary all day long.
Who are not in tweet wars.
Debra and John, it's so great to have you guys back in the saddle. Thanks for doing this.
We're waiting for another year. Ask us back in 2019. We'll be more upbeat.
Debra Satz and John Perry joining Ken and me for a Philosophers Roundtable. You're listening to Philosophy Talk. It's our annual philosophical year in review, the examined year, 2018.
Coming up, have all the assaults on democracy in the U.S. brought us to the precipice of fascism? Or is such talk just alarmist hyperbole?
The year in demagoguery and propaganda, when Philosophy Talk continues. Welcome back. It's the examined year 2018. I'm Josh Landy, and this is Philosophy Talk, the program that questions everything.
Except your intelligence. I'm Ken Taylor. We're taking a philosophical look at the past 12 months. Right now, it's the year in demagoguery and propaganda.
We're joined now by Jason Stanley. He's a professor of philosophy at Yale University and author, most recently, of How Fascism Works, the Politics of Us and Them. Welcome back to Philosophy Talk, Jason.
Thank you so much. It's great to be back.
So, Jason, I've been reading your fascinating book, How Fascism Works. Do you think 2018 was like we reached the tip? Why did you write this book now? Do you think we've reached the tipping point toward fascism or something?
I don't think we've reached a tipping point. I think fascism is always a threat, but I think in recent years, not just 2018, but the last 3 to 5 years, we've seen fascist movements in many countries arise, and they're linked to some extent. So ultranationalism in one country seems to be linked to ultranationalism in other countries. And I think in 2018, we've seen in Brazil, in Spain, we see the continuing success of these movements.
And you've got the AfD in Germany, and of course you've got the continuing presence of Marine Le Pen in France.
Now, some of these movements would resist your saying they're fascist movements. I mean, what do you mean by fascism, such that these movements, despite their own protestations, might disclaim the title fascist?
So it's worthwhile remembering that fascism is always based on ultranationalism,
right.
And the word fascist comes from the Italian, and so no one who's not Italian is going to identify with that word because it's a foreign word. So there's in between 1928 and 1935, when the Fascist Internationale was at full bloom and multiple fascist movements in different countries were arising, a Spanish fascist was asked to speak at one, and he said, "I'm not fascist, I'm Spanish." So American fascism is not going to be wrapped in some Eurotrash word like fascism.
You're right.
It's going to be wrapped in American ideals and American old boy stuff.
If I understand correctly, fascism is defined not just by ultranationalism, but by a combination of ultranationalism and authoritarianism, right? With the idea being we care first and foremost about our state, but our state's under threat from immigration and other things like that. And what we really need is a strong man. It's always a strong man who doesn't care about these niceties, these silly laws, but is going to inaugurate a regime which will protect us all. So, I know that obviously fascism is a word that gets bandied about a lot and so on, but couldn't we think that this applies to, at least to some extent, to the current situation in the United States? We have a kind of ginned up, imagined threat of a them that's threatening us, and we have to put us first. And what we really need is a strong guy who's going to trample all over the norms and protect us from this terrible threat.
I think it's helpful to begin with the title of Hitler's book, My Struggle. What he means is that life is a struggle. Nature involves a struggle. And the winner has value and the loser has no value. And in fascist ideology uses catastrophe and crisis. For Hitler, it was a food crisis. For the contemporary far right in Europe, it's an environmental crisis, among other things, cultural crisis. The crisis is too big for individuals to face alone. So nations have to come together and fight other nations. And the loser has no value and the winner has value. And so fascism is social Darwinism, but it's social Darwinism of the group and not the individual. When you have that ideology that leads you to favor loyalty, your nation over truth, over equality, then, why wouldn't you change the rules to gerrymander so that your party remains in power because you have more loyalty to your party, to your race, to your group?
Let me ask you a question, though. I mean, some of what you are calling fascism, some folks might see as that's part of the dynamic of populism. But here's the thing I think about populism and why it arises out of democracy. Because in the democracy, the people are a sprawling, snarling totality bound together often by little more than begrudging tolerance. In a populism says there are the real us and then there are the fake us. There are the people who exploit us. And the populist comes up and says, I am the true avatar of the will and wisdom of the people who trust me and this other part of the people, that democracy let be part of the people, we're going to close them off, or we're going to cage them or do something to them. I don't know if I think of that as fascism, but I think of it as part of the dynamics of how a people gets fractured and how a portion of the people want a hero to be the avatar of the genuine people, of the real Americans. So I agree with you about that. But I wonder, do you think all populist movements devolve into all the way over to fascism?
Absolutely not. And here we're going to disagree a little bit, as we disagreed during the 2016 elections. I think I'm skeptical about the concept of populism. I think too many movements count as populists for it to be a very explanatorily rich concept. Fascism is a very specific concept. The people are defined by a common ethnicity, a common language, a nation in the 19th century literature, a common race, a common ancestry. So where the us-them distinction is based on race, is based on ethnicity, is based on heritage, it's harshly patriarchal, looks back to the past, that's going to be fascism. Illiberal leftist movements, like communist movements, they have a very different structure. They create an us-them distinction, but the us-them distinction is based on class, and class is really fundamentally distinct from race.
Well, that's what. So maybe I don't know if you and I disagree or not. That's why I think there are populist movements of both the left and the right. I think there are populist movements that say it's the billionaire class. I mean, Bernie Sanders used to rail against the billionaire class, and Donald Trump was railing against the dark-skinned other. But both of them divide the people, right? And marshal the genuine people against the non-genuine people. And I find that America is gripped with this left populism versus right populism. Shall we divide the people in terms of race and ethnicity, or shall we divide the people in terms of class and advantage and all that sort of stuff? But both sides want to divide the people. And democracy says, no, what we need is this sprawling totality. It may be cacophonous. It may be knitted together by nothing but begrudging tolerance. It may be we'll have the struggling, the striving, and the successful at odds with each other in this sprawling totality. But it is this sprawling totality that is the people. And there are different reasons why the left populists want to divide the people this way and the right populists want to divide the people that way. But they both want to divide the people. And I think that's the real tragedy of America.
Well, I don't know, Ken. Let me push back a little bit from a different direction. I mean, I agree. First of all, I agree with Jason that there is a really important difference between a populist movement that strives in perhaps a fascistic way, I mean, if we're going to use that term, to undermine democracy and impose itself through underhanded means, voter suppression.
Voter suppression and also attacks on truth.
And attacks on truth, absolutely.
I'm not denying that there are important differences between left illiberalism and right illiberalism, but I'm just saying, and I'm insisting, that there is a liberalism on both the left and the right, and I think America suffers from both left illiberalism and right illiberalism. That's all I'm saying. Right.
I mean, we only have a small disagreement about whether America suffers from left illiberalism. I don't think Bernie Sanders is very illiberal. I mean, I do think there's left illiberalism. You saw it in Eastern Europe. You see it in China. And it's hard to sort of tease apart when you face authoritarian societies. Like in China, there's a lot of Han nationalism also intermingled with their authoritarianism.
So, Jason, what's your prognosis? I mean, both locally, that is, for the United States, and also globally. I mean, we've talked about the rise of disturbingly authoritarian movements around the world, or these movements that are sort of undermining democratic institutions and sort of dangerously fragmenting the population into an us and a them, or trying to get people to think of themselves as belonging to an us that's standing opposed to a them. Do you see things getting better, getting worse? Do you think there are things that we can all be doing to try to bring about a better future?
Well, we have to pay attention to the money. We have to pay attention to who's benefiting from these things. I think that's going to help us, because when we point out that the Wall Street Journal endorsed Bolsonaro in Brazil, then we can make it vivid to people that really these figures are not the ones that are, or Brexit. We can talk about the involvement of various multinational interests in Brexit, oil companies and others. So, that can help here.
Right, because if this is a populist movement, if you can get the people to see that in fact this is a movement being driven by very unpopulist entities.
Yeah, I want to make a prediction, Jason. I'm going to see if you agree with it. I'm going to make a dire prediction. I think we are witnessing the great unraveling of almost everything we've believed and held dear, the great unraveling of liberal democracy, the great unraveling of the capitalist economy, because it doesn't really know how to sustain itself, given that technology is about to throw 40% at least of all human beings out of work, and we don't really have thought through this, and climate change is coming. So we are witnessing a great unraveling, and what we should do what Zorba the Greek does at the end of that novel, dance. That's what we should do.
Well, I mean, I think we're facing. You and I see a lot similarly. We're facing challenges. You see these challenges clearly discussed in the works of the far right, like Guillaume Fay's "Why We Fight." You see them all the way back to Camp of the Saints. The idea is there's catastrophes coming, and in the face of these catastrophes, we must retreat to our ethnic enclaves, and because not all ethnic groups are going to survive, so we better make sure ours does. And we see this kind of politics cynically exploited by those who seek to make the catastrophes worse, because there's a sort of feedback loop. When the catastrophe is worse, people have more fear and more panic, and then you can exploit the fascist politics will become more effective. So we have to break that feedback loop.
Are you optimistic? I mean, you're a philosopher. You believe in reason. Are you in the optimistic Steven Pinker wing, or you have other views?
I am an optimist because I live in a country where Black Americans have faced these struggles, have faced far more consequential struggles than this over the last 150 years. And again, they've resisted and they have survived. So I think it would be just wrong of me, ridiculous of me, to adopt pessimism. I mean, my grandmother in the 1930s in Berlin, when the Nazis came, donned a Nazi social worker uniform and got a Gestapo ally and walked into Sachsenhausen 412 times to smuggle 412 people out over 3 years. So I'm not going to be pessimistic in the light of the history of heroism in this country and elsewhere.
I agree with you, Jason, and I think it's also a call to the struggle. I mean, it's not just that we happened to survive, that African Americans happened to achieve at least a reasonable measure of freedom in this country. It's not that Jews happened to survive the Holocaust. Concrete steps had to be taken, and I think we're all called, I think you are calling upon all of us to take those concrete steps today.
On that note, Jason, I'm going to thank you for joining us. It's been a wonderful, if somewhat depressing, but in the end uplifting conversation.
Thank you so much, Ken. It's always great to talk to you.
Jason Stanley from Yale University on the year in demagoguery and propaganda. We invite you to continue examining the year that was 2018 at our online community of thinkers at Philosophers Corner, where our motto, with apologies to Descartes, is cogito ergo blogo, I think, therefore I blog.
And you can become a partner in our community of thinkers at our website, philosophytalk.org. Did the years seem to fly by for you? It will now. It's Ian Scholes, the 60-second philosopher.
Ian Scholes, 2018 marks a turning point in history. Well, it feels like the end of something, like horse and buggies, attention spans, and the beginning of something else. Fluorescent lights, cars giving up the will to drive, podcasts come into their own, radio by people who pretend they forgot what radio is. It's become the disingenuous decade. We're too smart for our own good, pretending we don't know anything, or we're Donald Trump, who doesn't know anything and doesn't care. We're so self-serving, it's amazing. Look at some of the end-of-the-year lists so far. Facebook had one about how people use Facebook in 2018. Spotify had one about how people use Spotify in 2018. Forbes did a year in retail, which had a big year. Amazon bought New York City. Did you hear that? With money that New York gave Amazon. Amazon is the Forbes Retailer of the Year, of course, echoed in Wisconsin. Here, Foxconn, worth $1 gajillion, have a $1 gajillion tax break just for being you, here in Wisconsin. Starbucks banned Pornhub in its stores. Pornhub, in return, banned Starbucks in its porn. But who watches porn in a coffee shop? Don't tell me, I don't want to know. Influencers became a thing I heard of, bloggers, YouTubers, etc. Marketers pay them to wear designer goods as a low-rent marketing ploy. Micro-targeting, it's called. It's given rise to influencer fraud. People who claim to have followers and clicks but are just friendless, greedy schmoes. Marketing insiders are calling for tighter regulations. Most boring true crime ever. Retail is sliding down the slippery slope into total online purgatory. Decline in footfalls, it's called in 2018. Echoey abandoned storefronts. There are only so many of them that Spirit Halloween superstores can occupy. And that's just 1 month out of the year. A journalist was murdered and cut up by a Saudi Arabian prince, more or less, allegedly. Outrage was muted because we were more outraged by the lack of outrage. The default public reaction was, Well, that's not okay, but what you going to do? Prince Ruthless has a lot of money. We're going to get some of that. Besides, the dead guy was just an op-ed guy. Who cares? You ever read him? I never did. Living op-ed guy Gavin McInnes, co-founder of Vice and the Proud Boys, even in 2018, an amazing jackass, was kicked out of Glenn Beck's media empire Blaze. Is there an empire? He was earlier banned from YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. You don't need to know why. He's history, that's all. And this is the end of history. Again, I think. Is Brexit dead? I think so, like history. But maybe history is still twitching. A Virginia high school teacher who refused to use a transgender student's new pronouns was fired for insubordination. Glenn Beck's Blaze was outraged. Maybe Gavin McInnes, too. We do not know. He is dead to us. Transgressive, I think, is the adjective du jour. Maybe gender fluid. I don't know. NSYNC got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Thousands turned out to honor the middle-aged boy band. Oh, and that hush money to Stormy Daniels was not paid with campaign contributions. It was a simple cash transaction, says Trump. A simple man. Almost Amish, really. In climate change news, the puffer fish, the Japanese delicacy that is deadly if not prepared right, is moving north to find cooler waters and in the process creating new hybrids. Deadly ones. Sales of yellow vests have gone through the roof in France. Oh, and the earth is flat. I had no idea. Glenn Beck and wife stopped at a Texas Walmart and paid off random layaway customers' accounts to the tune of $27,000. Also, Kid Rock in Nashville, $81,000 worth of layaway accounts. Both inspired by Tyler Perry. Atlanta, $400,000. Give that money to Walmart, philanthropic rich people. I guess that's a thing. Like Gritty, the mascot for the Philadelphia Flyers, the Blue Wave, and Elon Musk. Remember when he was a genius and America was going to replace railroads with pneumatic tubes he designed in a napkin at Denny's? This year, he called a hero who rescued kids from an underwater cave a pedophile. He smoked a joint awkwardly, and he made some weird tweets on Ambien or something that caused the stock market to crash. We don't have that anymore. Thanks, Elon Musk. Thanks for nothing. See you next year. I gotta go.
Philosophy Talk is a presentation of KALW Local Public Radio San Francisco and the trustees of Leland Stanford Junior University, copyright 2018.
Our executive producers are David Demarest and Tina Pamantuan.
The senior producer is Devin Strolovich. Laura McGuire is our director of research. Cindy Prince-Baum is our director of marketing.
Thanks also to Merle Kessler, Angela Johnston, and Lauren Schechter.
Support for Philosophy Talk comes from Stanford University and from the partners at our online community of thinkers.
The views expressed or misexpressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of Stanford University or of our other funders.
Not even when they're true and reasonable.
The conversation continues on our website, philosophytalk.org, where you too can become a partner in our community of thinkers. I'm Josh Landy.
And I'm Ken Taylor. Thank you for listening.
And thank you for thinking.
Dictionary.com has chosen its word of the year, misinformation.
Merriam-Webster's word of the year for 2018 is justice.
The Oxford word of the year 2018 is toxic.